Our next speaker is Liene Luksika. She will bring a guided tour through our digital sovereign ecosystem. And I will pass the word to you.
Thank you. Now, according to the previous talk, I need to re-evaluate or at least check the carbon footprint of our cloud service providers because we tend to use smaller ones. So now I'm very worried of their input, but let's see. And actually, this is one of the only few countries where I can leave special characters in my last name, and I'm sure you can pronounce it. I'm a product owner from a company called Vision in Switzerland. Vision is spelled as VSHN, but it's intended to be pronounced as what your eyes do. And we're a rather small DevOps company. We take care of the processes around software development so that the developers can focus on writing code. And we work with any on-prem, private, public cloud infrastructure. And we use Kubernetes as the basis for managing and orchestrating configuration, backups, monitoring, everything around your infrastructure. It has been mentioned already a couple of times that waking up at 3 a.m. is not fun. And we have hacked our way around that by having offices in Zurich, Switzerland, and also Vancouver, Canada. Of course, we offer the possibility of a sleepy on-call engineer from within Switzerland if that's the absolute requirement of our customers. But nobody wants that. We have a company policy that we do open source first, and we are also very proud to have a few of our own open source tools. One of them is KTOP. It's a backup solution. It's also a CNCF incubating project. Does anybody know Velero? Yeah, so KTOP is the other one. And that's ours. And we are very proud of it. We also have Project SYN, and that one is a pre-integrated tooling system for updating backups and alert management for Kubernetes applications. It works mainly with OpenShift because we use a lot of OpenShift. We also have Esperjote, which is a very, very new one. And that's intended for heavy lifting for the OpenShift customization. And it works also very well with Project SYN. We are also very friendly because sometimes you need tools that are not open source. So we partner up with a lot of different companies, including, as already mentioned, Red Hat OpenShift, because it's just, you need some solid infrastructure to run your services on. And actually being here, for me, feels a bit like homecoming, because my husband is Czech, and he's actually from Prague. And this gives me a chance to visit my family. And I don't know about your families, but for me, when visiting them, they make me eat. They make me eat a lot. And that's why, for me, I will take you on a food tour. And as everything in Czech begins with chlebičky, including this conference, our digital sovereignty journey also begins with chlebičky. And it all started for us with a very nice customer project in a controlled environment where we were allowed to build something cool that sparked interest for us. It started with one cloud, one control plane on the same cluster. You get standard t-shirt-sized instances from only 2 databases, and we managed to provide it on Kubernetes, leveraging the Open Service Broker API. And we used it as a patch and transform, basically. The customer comes to Cloud Foundry and orders either a MariaDB or a Redis instance in a specific size, and that request then gets passed to Open Service Broker API that translates it to Crossplane language. Then Crossplane does its magic and spits out an instance that the customer can use. It had some features like alerting. Of course, everybody needs alerting, and that one was done by Prometheus and Alert Manager, and then passed to Opsgenie backups, our user responsibility. Then all databases were standard sized, and also updates were performed in a manual manner on scheduled time scale. It was basically like going to a typical Czech diner or KCD lunch. During lunchtime, you get 4 options, and it works. It just works, you know. Everyone's happy. We're moving on. And I need to remind that, or actually mention that this was done back in 2021 when Crossplane was version 0.17. And from there on, our journey began, and we got inspired to create other different products based on that. And I'll get to it step by step, but I mean, you've already noticed that I've mentioned a tool named Crossplane already a couple of times. And it's important for the context, because for us, this tool means a lot of different things. It has brought a lot of joy and also pain and some dark hairs, or not so dark hairs anymore, in some engineers' heads. Actually, at this year's KubeCon, Jared Watts, who is one of the masterminds behind Crossplane, said that Vision has been such an early adopter of Crossplane when it was bleeding edge technology that we got some deep cuts, which is true. It really is true. And for the people who are not the 2 engineers from Upbound, I will remind that Crossplane is a very powerful control plane tool. Crossplane lets you build your own control planes and manage cloud-native software. It works as an API. It brings up abstraction levels, and the control planes exposes the API so that you can use it to configure any cloud-native software. When an object drifts from the desired state, Crossplane tries to fix it, which also can cause some issues sometimes. But that's a different story. And yeah, the most important part is that it works with cloud-native software, which is why we used it, which is why we needed to use it, why we wanted to use it. Also, back in the day when it was very fragile. We actually started also a Crossplane competency center in Switzerland. Because we have had so much experience with it, we wanted to share it with others and maybe help them have a pat on the shoulder when it's needed, or a little rubber duck, because sometimes that's what you need. And well, now that the chlebičky are gone, moving into Maine, as in today's Maine, we call it AppCat, or Application Catalog. It's basically an app store for engineers, or a marketplace of managed services that offer some standard services like Postgres, Redis, identity management like Keycloak. Also, OpenBow is coming soon. And we built it very similar to the customer project. We called it Framework 1.0. It's a framework of automated service provisioning and day 2 operations. We got inspired from the customer project, so we decided to build it very similar, but it should be bigger and better. It should work with every cloud service provider, big or small, it doesn't matter. We also thought that we will rent applications, rent the managed services from other cloud service providers, because, I mean, who doesn't want 7 types of Postgres, right? The choice is important. So the service definition XRDs will define the API for the end user. Then compositions define what happens when the service is provisioned. It instructs how the Helm should be deployed and created. Then Crossplane does the magic again in the background with the compositions, and it uses Helm. But you know how it is when you want something very simple and easy, because customers have requests. So their requests started coming in as feature requests, and they really made sense because, I mean, backups are nice, self-service restore is sometimes very much needed. Logs, everyone needs solid logs because you need to know what's happening. Metrics, you need to see those beautiful Grafana dashboards, and you want to have on-call or not so on-call, but just proactive alerts of what's happening. Maintenance needs to be self-service. You want to schedule your own maintenance windows. It has to be automated. Version upgrades, major version upgrades, scaling, because high availability, not high availability, that is important, right? We need that. And some very specific feature requests started coming in, which is fine. We can cope with that. And this all led us to build on top of the initial framework, which led to some issues. And if you have tried making Knedlike on your own, you know what I mean with issues. Because even if you just change one parameter from the grandma's recipe, it can end up uneatable. No one wants that, right? So we fixed the framework. We thought, okay, let's just not use the provider applications because it's just not needed. Provider for cloud service we'll use just to provision buckets. That kind of works, that's fine. Then provider Helm is good, we can work with that, let's keep it. Then we decided to not rent out services from other cloud service providers because they constantly update something and it's too much effort to take care of our infra, their infra, integrate everything at once. It just, no, it's too much. And nobody wants 7 versions of Postgres, apparently. So we cleaned it up, but we wanted to make it better because it's needed. And well, actually in the customer project, there was split architecture. Split architecture as in there's control cluster and the service cluster. And by introducing split architecture, the logic should happen in the control cluster and all the services live on the service cluster. It worked on the customer project. It should work also in our use case. But this is like when you and grandma are in the kitchen. You know nothing about cooking. Grandma knows everything. But you're the one who's cooking and grandma's giving instructions until grandma leaves. And you know nothing what's happening. Suddenly everything is burning, it starts smelling, you scream, you cry, nothing happens. By the time grandma again enters the room, it's just, no, it just doesn't, no, it just doesn't work. So introducing split control plane for us made the communication just impossible. The reconciliation loops were not happening, and Crossplane doesn't support natively different cluster communication. Provider Kubernetes does, but you don't want to do that because the complexity is just too much. And the added benefit is very, very doubtful. So again, we cleaned up our infrastructure and we thought that's fine, we are gonna go with one cluster only, everything lives on the same cluster, everybody talks to each other, it works. And we are reworking this architecture so many times, and it's just constant trial and error, trial and error, and we all are just getting hungry and very frustrated. And when we were looking at what's happening for us, AppCat started to look a bit like Gaudi's Sagrada Familia. It is something, it's intended as something very magnificent and big and beautiful, and it operates even though it's under construction, but for now, it remains just an enormous construction site. And it's demotivating is the word that the engineers used. So we went back to the drawing board. We went to a greenfield approach. And for inspiration, we went to the CNCF landscape. Are you familiar with that? Right. This is actually pre-filtered. I'm not showing you everything, just for the sake of actual representation. So here you see only the CNCF and open source projects. And we want to stay true to our company philosophy, which is open source first. And we actually had a moment, few days in the Greenfield workshop, where the other group just burst into the room and was like, we are trying to reinvent Crossplane. Let's just go with Crossplane the proper way this time. Because we have been using it for so long, it got so tangled and messed up with a lot of patches and a lot of different things on top of that, that it wasn't maintainable anymore. That's why we were reinventing the wheel, so to say, but this time in a clean way. And to be honest, now there is a somewhat standardized way, somewhat genuine approach how to do that. And we also decided to clean up the day 2 operations. So the framework 2.0 for us is a proper Crossplane v2 implementation, using it the way that it's intended. And well, Yuri before today asked me if we use the guidance from Upbound of how to write compositions with Go, and no, we don't. I checked with engineers because it wasn't there when we started. But we will. Now we will. And with Framework 2.0, we want to really leverage the Crossplane 2 functionality and work the intended way. The working title of this framework is Apps Lab. We are still thinking if this sticks or not, otherwise we go with AppCat. And we will use composition functions wherever possible. We just want to stick with that. And the logic should be in the composition. And only if absolutely necessary, we intend to write our own functions. We currently have the logic in the functions, and it's just enormous, gigantic function. And instead of passing the logic to the function, we pass parameters, which works, but it's not really sustainable, and it's prone to error. And it can fail. Like I said, we want to clean up the data operations, because currently it's a big mess, and it's sometimes very nested, and it can cause problems. The engineer actually the other day said that building something complicated is easy, but building something easy is really hard. And we are trying to really decouple this. We want to take care of the logic side. We like Crossplane and we want to use it, but we want to move it away from the service maintainers, that they don't have to use it, because it's our choice and we want to. Actually, now that we're done with main, it's time for a second main because we're in Czech. And you haven't really been in Czech Republic if you haven't tried Svíčková. You might still have some chance, so you can still do that. And the main, in this case, is a sovereign app store. We call it Servala, and it's intended as a connection point for businesses and developers and cloud service providers to offer a scalable and easy-to-use cloud-native marketplace. And sovereign has been used, I feel like, in every second talk here. And in this case, sovereign means without a vendor lock-in, independent. And it looks like this. It's actually also a split architecture, but split architecture not for AppCat use case, split architecture for the user, because AppCat, so the service catalog, lives on the worker cluster, and the logic with which the user communicates lives on the web portal, which is like a management cluster. Everything is separated. We actually intend to work with different cloud service providers, but in a clean way, in a clean, separated way. We have a bit of time for bingo. So anyone uses 4 of the tools listed here? 1. Is there a 5? Wow. Okay, good. Well, the first one that we use is KTOP. Remember the backup solution? We use it for backups and restore. Victoria metrics and logs, because it's very nice and user-friendly. We like Victoria. Grafana, because there is just nothing better at this point than Grafana visualizations. Everyone's just so used to them, and they're hard to not like, right? The green is appealing. Alert Manager for managing alerts. Renovate for staying up to date, because no one wants to do that manually. Project Syn, as mentioned before, Project Syn is for the configuration management. Then Talos. Initially, we worked heavily with OpenShift, and for this specific use case, we went with Talos because it has a smaller footprint. It's more raw, so to say. And we actually use Talos together with Topf. Topf is a small open source tool, open sourced by PostFinance in Switzerland. Hello, PostFinance. It's a very nice tool, and it manages machine configs and bootstrapping. And we like it. It's very, very clean, very nice little tool. We also use Espejote, which is our internal open source tool. Then, yeah, what didn't I mention? Everything else, Argo CD, of course. Of course. Everyone uses Argo. We also have very strict requirements for infrastructure for our cloud service providers. And that we learned also the hard way, because you need to have a stable infra to be able to provide a stable product for the customers. And for us, it's important that the API to manage the cloud resources is there, is maintained, and we can reach out to the cloud service provider if we need something more. The self-service VM provisioning is available, custom VMs that are image-based, then object storage that is S3 compatible, because everybody needs storage, fast SSD block storage. We need at least 100 plus storage device attachments to the VMs, then managed load balancer with at least 100 listeners, and we had to request to increase the listeners because it also just didn't work well, a good firewall. And actually, you know what's for dessert? A ecosystem in the shape of babovka. Because no one can do it alone. You need to have a circle of trust to move forward with this. And for us, the circle of trust looks like a cloud service provider with a stable, trustworthy infra, a software vendor that creates the applications and keeps them up to date and not just lets it live out there unmaintained, an implementation partner who can package the application so that the customer can just use it. And of course, we also need managed service providers who are ready to take the spatula and wake up at night and make something cooked when it's still a bit raw and shaky. And that's how our ecosystem looks like. Thank you.